Welcome. I'm Erik Fleming, host of A Moment with Erik Fleming, the podcast of our time. I want to personally thank you for listening to the podcast. If you like what you're hearing, then I need you to do a few things. First, I need subscribers. I'm on Patreon at patreon.com/A Moment with Erik Fleming. Your subscription allows an independent podcaster like me the freedom to speak truth to power and to expand and improve the show. Second, leave a 5-star review for the podcast on the streaming service you listen to it. That will help the podcast tremendously. Third, go to the website, momenterik.com. There you can subscribe to the podcast, leave reviews and comments, listen to past episodes, and even learn a little bit about your host. Lastly, don't keep this a secret like it's your own personal guilty pleasure. Tell someone else about the podcast. Encourage others to listen to the podcast and share the podcast on your social media platforms because it is time to make this moment a movement. Thanks in advance for supporting the podcast of our time. I hope you enjoy this episode as well.
The following program is hosted by the NVG Podcast Network.
Hello, welcome to another moment with Erik Fleming. I am your host, Erik Fleming. So on this episode, I've got 3 guests who are 3 very fascinating women. I have Dr. Erika Wattley, who's going to talk about leadership. I have Victoria Hetherington, who is going to talk about her book, The Friend Machine, which deals with relationships with artificial intelligence. Yes, it's a very fascinating interview and an incredible book. And Pamela Campos Palma, who has decided to be more of a free agent in her political strategy and organizing, but she has founded organizations, she has led organizations, and she is still engaged in the fight for veterans and for marginalized people in the political process. So I think you're going to enjoy the conversations with all 3 of these women, and just like you enjoy this podcast. We ask people that if you do support the podcast, please do so by going to www.momenterik.com. Make a financial contribution, either as a one-time donation or a subscription, catch up on episodes, the whole 9 yards. So we greatly appreciate your continued support, even by listening. And, these are interesting times, and I've been very fortunate to have interesting people analyze and discuss these times that we're in. And we're hoping that we are inspiring some people, that we are energizing some people, that we are encouraging people. Because the one thing we never want to lose in this time is hope. All right. So now that I've gotten us caught up and set up for this episode, it's time to kick it off. And as always, we kick it off with a moment of news with Grace G.
Thanks, Erik. A private autopsy of Nolan Wells, a black college football player found dead off the coast of Mississippi, could not rule out foul play, prompting his family to demand further investigation. A coalition of mostly Democratic-led states sued to block the Department of Homeland Security from withholding over $1 billion in disaster preparedness grants to force states into adopting the Trump administration's preferred election practices. U.S. Representative Ralph Norman and Senator Darlene Graham will run in a South Carolina Republican special primary to replace the late U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham. Former Maine Senate President Troy Jackson has effectively secured the Democratic nomination to challenge incumbent Republican U.S. Senator Susan Collins. Democrat Amish Shah and Republican Jay Feely won their respective primaries for Arizona's 1st Congressional District, while U.S. Representative Andy Biggs secured the Republican nomination for governor. Vance Belter received a life sentence in federal prison for assassinating one Minnesota Democratic lawmaker, Melissa Hortman, and attempting to murder another. A U.S. judge set a June 2027 trial date for ousted Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro on drug trafficking charges, though his defense plans to seek dismissal by citing sovereign immunity. U.S. Army veteran Andrew Arabaca was arrested after protesting ICE by pouring gasoline and setting a fire at a federal building in Lower Manhattan. The Trump administration is withdrawing controversial subpoenas issued to New York Times journalists during a leak investigation regarding the president's flights. A Texas appeals court reversed the closure of 3 clinics managed by a Houston midwife, ruling the state attorney general lacked evidence that she violated the state's abortion ban. And the CDC reported 4,173 lab-confirmed cases of cyclosporiasis across 41 states since May 1st, with over 7,400 additional cases still under investigation. I am Grace G., and this has been A Moment of News.
All right. Thank you, Grace, for that moment of news. And now it is time for my guest, Dr. Erica B. Wattley. Dr. Wattley, renowned for her leadership as the #1 nationally ranked salesperson for T-Mobile in 2024 and 2025, she is currently the sales director in telecom. And previously, she was the global director of customer success for cybersecurity operations in North and Latin America at Hush Cyber LLC in Atlanta. In addition to managing the overall effectiveness of the client support specialists as they coordinate with the client support manager, Dr. Wattley tracks and optimizes key metrics, provides global network security policy management support for international and U.S. clients, and, among other responsibilities, ensures that customers have access to customized solutions that suit their network environment. Having entered the industry more than 15 years ago, Dr. Wattley was Chief Academic Officer at Frame Change from 2020 to 2022 and Cybersecurity Institute between 2016 and 2017. She also leveraged her expertise as a Senior Advisor Program Manager of Technology Infrastructure and Managing Professor of Online Programs at Argosy University from 2009 to 2016. Among other noteworthy roles, Dr. Wattley provided her services in a consultant capacity. Besides her professional goals, Dr. Wattley has been active in the classroom. In addition to serving as a professor at Unity College, she has been an assistant professor of technical instructional design at the University of Washington since 2020 and an adjunct professor at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology since 2020. As a scholar and expert in her field, Dr. Wattley has authored many professional cybersecurity articles, including Start with the One in the Mirror, Building the Best Cybersecurity Customer Success Team, A Guide to Team Building Done Right in 2023, Cybersecurity Customer Success Plans, Measuring Security Protocol Performance Trust, your CSM in 2023, and Facing Something New, Trust Yourself and Be a Boss, Customer Success Manager's Guide to Confidence, also in 2023. She has also contributed several book chapters and has spoken publicly in the field. An avid leader in her community like her great uncle, Dr. Benjamin Elijah Mays, senior advisor and spiritual mentor to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and advisors to President Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon, and Ford, Dr. Wattley has notably served as a national media spokesperson for AdoptUsKids.org, National Adoption Association, advocating and encouraging everyone to help find forever families for children since 2024, and JustPennies.org, an organization dedicated to social change through education in technology and cybersecurity related fields. She has also served as a board member for organizations that support youth development, like the Atlanta Girls Choir, founded by Daryl and Mag Wattley, Campus Insights, A+ Enrichment Services, and Studio X Elite Dance Company. Also as a Georgia representative for the National Young Leaders Conference in Washington, D.C. Highly educated, Dr. Wattley completed a course of study in Portuguese at the Universidade de Coimbra in Portugal. She subsequently graduated with distinction and earned a bachelor's degree in Spanish language and literature from the Universidad de Valladolid in Spain, and a second bachelor's of education and bachelor of arts in Spanish language and literature and education from Iowa State University's School of Science and Technology on a full academic scholarship. Moreover, Dr. Wattley completed a Master of Science in Adult Learning and Leadership and a Doctor in Education and Administrative Leadership from Walden University. She speaks Spanish, Portuguese, French, and English fluently. To remain aware of developments in the field, Dr. Wattley has been a board member of the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages. Dr. Wattley has received several awards for her work in education, including being named as the External Partner Engagement Coordinator of the Year, as the Georgia Cyber Academy's Teacher of the Year, and as Radio 1 of Atlanta's Community Teacher of the Year. She also earned numerous accolades for her educational accomplishments, including more than 40 academic trophies and being named as the Iowa State University of Science and Technology's Ronald E. McNair Scholar and Researcher. Dr. Wattley credits her success to her Christian faith in God, her parents, Reverend Tyrone Hicks, a retired federal agent, and Janice Hicks, a retired Teacher of the Year. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor and privilege to have as a guest on this podcast, Dr. Erika B. Wattley. All right. Dr. Erika B. Wattley. How you doing, sister? You doing good?
I am doing great. Erik, thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for accepting the invitation. I had to do a little rearranging on the schedule, but we got you back on, so I'm really, really glad about that. So one of the things I like to do to kick the conversation off is I do a couple of icebreaker exercises. You being a facilitator, you know what that is. And hopefully it might not be as fun and engaging as yours, but we're going to try it.
Okay, I hope I don't lose this game. All right, let's go.
All right. So the first icebreaker is a quote I want you to respond to. And the quote is, "The tragedy of life doesn't lie in not reaching your goal. The tragedy lies in having no goal to reach. It isn't a calamity to die with dreams unfulfilled, but it is a calamity not to dream. It is not a disgrace not to reach the stars, but it is a disgrace to have no stars to reach for. Not failure, but low aim is sin."
That actually, if I'm not mistaken, is a quote from Dr. Benjamin Elijah Mays, who happens to be my great uncle. And the school I graduated from, Benjamin Elijah Mays High School in the Atlanta public school system, that school was named for him, and he's buried on the campus of Morehouse College. I mean, he was the president there for 7 years, and he was an advisor to 4 different presidents.
Yeah. So what does that quote mean to you?
I'll start by saying that I heard a preacher say one time that the one of his concerns was that he feared that we were raising a generation, not that wasn't doing the right thing, but didn't even know what the right thing was. And so it kind of fits in with that to me, that if you don't even have a goal that you're reaching for, you don't even have a vision, you have nothing that you are trying to accomplish. And unfortunately, I see that a lot lately. I mean, I know that it takes time to really kind of come into yourself I still feel like I'm evolving like every day and trying to get better. But I feel like there is a lot of, as our culture has changed into, I guess, let's keep it 100, or let's, keep it real. I think a lot of people have kind of leaned into I'm just going to go with how I feel and live in the moment and that kind of thing. And it's made it to where the achievement of goals, setting goals, and looking toward what's in the future and how do I get there, putting a plan of action in place and doing things on a regular basis that are going to actually get you to that goal. Those are disciplines that are not always being practiced.
Yeah. All right. So, and by the way, if we had a prize, you would have won since you knew that was your great uncle that said that. The next icebreaker is what we call 20 questions.
Okay.
So I need you to give me a number between 1 and 20.
7.
All right. What do you consider the best way to stay informed about politics, current events, health, etc.?
I am the worst. Oh my God. That's the worst thing you could ask me. I'm a person where things loop in my head, right? And so the news completely stresses me out because they come on and they tell you, oh my God, there was a war or somebody dropped a bomb or this terrible thing happened to this family or whatever. And they're like, news at 10. And then you're like, wait, I'm not going to be here at 10 or whatever. And they never tell you the end of the story. So I'm just like stressed out about the war, the bomb, this thing that happened to the family. And they never tell you the answer. Right. So I am very bad about staying current with those trends. And I end up getting them by third party. They have to be really important to come up for me. But honestly, I do get them. I attend a lot of events with the Council for Quality Growth, and I feel like I get them before they hit the news.
Yeah. Because if you show up at a think tank like that, yeah, that's going to be some what they call insider information.
Yes.
Yeah. So you get the news before it hits, but that's the whole point, Doc, about it's a teaser. It's supposed to get you excited to figure out, yeah, I want to see this bomb drop. I want to, whatever the news teaser is.
Yeah.
But I see they got to work harder to get you to watch the local news anyway, but that's fine. That's good. What do you love about being an educator, and when did you acknowledge that was your calling?
Okay. So I think for me, so I taught for 15 years in the K-12 sector, and then I taught for 12 years at the university level. What ended up happening was initially my love was not for education itself, but it was for my languages. So I speak Spanish, French, and Portuguese. And I just absolutely was in love with Spanish. And so I won Best in Spanish 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, most outstanding high school student for foreign languages for the city of Atlanta. I went to governor's honors in Spanish. Then I went and studied at La Universidad de Valladolid in Spain, and I got a sobresaliente rating from there. La Universidad de Coimbra in Portugal. I was one of 3 students selected from Iowa State. I went to Paris. Je suis allée à Paris, when I was on vacations there, studying in Spain. And so I just loved languages. Iowa State had a requirement that if you graduated with a language, you had to have a bachelor's in education, a whole bachelor's. So I got a bachelor's in secondary education. And then once I got in, and I absolutely loved it. I loved it. And I became teacher of the year for Georgia Cyber. So, and that's Georgia's largest school in Georgia. So I just absolutely loved it. I love my content, and I love sharing that love of language, of culture, of, travel, of understanding other people, understanding yourself because you understand others in a different way, in a global sense. I just absolutely love that.
Yeah. It's amazing to hear you talk and you just flow from those different languages. I took Spanish in college, And the only Spanish people I knew were the teachers. So I wasn't going to immerse myself with them and hang out with them. Had I gone to college during this time in history, I'd probably be proficient in Spanish because Jackson, Mississippi has an incredible Latino population now. But, when I was in college, it was, yeah, we didn't have the interaction. And I think immersion is so important in that. But you are so, just listening to you rattling off the schools that you went to in the native language, I think that's an amazing talent. And I'm glad that you felt the love to teach that. Because some people just use it like you're in the business community, so you just use it to make money. But you wanted to share that love, and I think that's important for the listeners to know. What moment in your life moved you from being stuck between potential and progress?
Potential and progress. The connector, I would say, between potential and progress is action. That's the connector. That is, and I'm a person probably who does like way too much action, right? Because I kind of can't sit still, right? And I think they have a terminology for that nowadays where they call it fail fast. Do something, get started, but knowing that I could do something and that progress, I have to be doing something. And so I always have some goal that I have to be working on. And because if you think about it, if you're not growing and if you're not changing, the only alternative is that you're dying, really. And because even if you don't use your muscles, like if you lay in bed and you don't use your muscles, they atrophy. They go bad. If you have fruit and you sit it and you just don't touch it, it's gonna rot. And that's what happens with our lives. If we're not growing, if we're not changing, if we're not evolving, if we are not getting better, if we're not transforming, that's absolutely what's going to happen. And iron sharpens iron. So if you are not surrounding yourself with people who are in that same mindset or in a higher mindset than you are and doing different things. I just remember originally, this is going to sound super, I know I'll probably get some flack for this, but I'm from the South. Okay. My grandparents had 11 children. Okay. My grandparents got married in 2017. They were married their entire lives until death did them part. Right. And they had 11 kids. And so I'm from the South. I was like, I'm going to get married and have 11 kids too, right? And so I was going to college and I was like, I'm going to college and I'm going to become a doctor and I'm going to have kids and stay home. And they were like, why do you need a doctor to have kids and stay home? I was like, because I want my kids to have the best. So they'll have a doctor mom who stays home, right? And they're like, you don't need a doctor to have kids. Like, what? Obviously, I don't stay home. I work. But that's not the point. The point is, I was like, while I am waiting to find Mr. Right or Mr. Right to find me, I still have to work, right? And I'm still reaching these goals. So that kind of thing about, that potential or getting there and progressing, we have to be in a mode of progress. And if you think about, people died for us to have the right to sit in the seats that we sit in, for us to walk in the rooms that we walk in, for us to have these conversations. They died for us to be here. And we owe it to them. We owe it to ourselves. We owe it to our future generations to take advantage of every moment that's given to us. And so, like, I'm the oldest of 32 grandkids. Remember I said grandma had 11 kids. So imagine all of them got married and had 3 to 6 kids each. And there you go. So I'm the oldest of 32 grandkids. And when I was going off to college, they're like, okay, everyone's watching you. And if you mess up, they're going to all mess up too. So if you fail, then they're all going to fail college. So you don't fail. And I went to school. I was super nervous. And I was like, oh my God, I felt like I had like all 32 of them on my back to every class that I went. Right. And so that kind of weight is weighty. Right. But in a way, we have to have a little weight, in our lives so we can keep going and we'll know exactly what it is we're doing and how important it is.
Yeah, see, mine is inverse. So I was an only child. So my thinking was, if I screw up, then my parents are going to be looked at as like, bro, at least you should have had another one so you'd increase the odds or something like that. You know what I'm saying? It was like I had the pressure of being the only child, and I had to succeed.
Oh, wow.
Because there were no other options. Now growing up, that meant I had to do all the chores and all this stuff. But I guess that was the same motivation, just in reverse. It was like I was their only shot to do something. And I remember I used to get in arguments with my parents. We got adults, and they'd be saying, well, you could have done this. Hey, I didn't go to jail. All right. So let's start. Let's start. I can go to prison. I'm not a drug dealer. So,
Yeah.
let's kind of, balance out the criticism a little bit. But I mean, we used to do that in fun, but I understand about that pressure and all that, which leads me to this next question. You once said that progress doesn't wait for perfection. It waits for leadership. And I think that's that you do it in an educational or a business setting, but I think it's very, very profound in politics as well. But what did you mean by that quote?
So many times when we talk about, there's a lot of things that we wait before we kind of put it out there. I'm working on this project or this prototype or I'm working on this business, but it's not ready for people to see, right? I don't want to share it yet. This art I'm working on, this song I'm working on, this whatever I'm doing, this program, this summer camp, this whatever it is. We hold back so many times, right? But you got to start somewhere, right? And I think the Bible says, despise not the day of small beginnings, right? And so it's like, you shouldn't hate the tiny start. Everything started small. Everything started with one. Every giant corporation that we see began with one idea, right? One conversation, one scribble on a notepad. And if you wait for the perfect day, the perfect time, the perfect setting, all the perfect people to be in, your hair to be perfect, right? You're never going to do it. You're never going to get started, right? And you're never going to have any success at all.
Yeah, it's like in the political sense, a lot of good people don't run for office because they'll say, I'm not perfect. And one of my favorite political sayings is from Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. He says, I'm not a perfect servant, I'm a public servant, right? And so, the whole goal is, if you've got an idea, if you see something that needs to be changed, then step out there and do it. Now, Graham Plattner did it. It didn't go so well for him, but I admire the fact that even though he knew he had some struggles, he felt compelled to go out there and say, look, I'm offering myself for this, right? And what he ended up doing, even though he's not going to personally benefit from it, he's activated some people to believe we can change this. And even though it's going to be a different messenger, the seed has been planted that we can make a difference in our state. And I think,
right.
I think a lot of times in the movement, you mentioned that people had died, and in Mississippi, doing a lot of politics there, it was like, there were some people that were in the movement that wanted to get all the credit. And there were other people that was like, yeah, that's not what we did this for. It's like, I don't care if you even know my name. I just, I did all this protest, and I put my neck on the line so that my people would advance, not necessarily me. And I think that's missing a lot in where we are as a culture, is that people want to get all the credit instead of looking at the big picture and just say, can I move the needle? Can I help get people to see the vision? Right. So when I saw that you had said that, I said, this is perfect for our discussion, because I think in our political discourse, we don't have leadership anymore. We're not in the age of heroes, as Homer said. But we've got to develop these young people. and we've got it. And even some old people that just, like you said, I'm just waiting for the right time. And, you keep waiting for the right time and you'll miss your opportunity. So,
Right. And I just do it afraid, do it unprepared, do it for the first time, because everything you do, you're doing it for the first time. This is today, whatever date today is. I'm really bad with dates. Whatever day and date today is, it's the first time we're all doing it. If you opened your eyes and you woke up today, this is your first time that you're doing today. And you're so right about that. There's so many times that we judge people so harshly, and we put them on pedestals. Oh, or they're a leader. Leader, they don't walk on water unless it's frozen. And then be careful, they're still going to slip, right? They're just people. They're all just people trying to make their way through life, and everyone has struggles. They do. And so, but that's not when they're taking an office, or they're taking up, some sort of, when they're taking a role, any leadership role that you're taking, you're going to have your good days, your bad days. You're going to be prepared. You're going to be good at some things and bad at other things. There's no person who's awesome at everything. They're not. And if they tell you they are, they're not telling you the whole story, or maybe they don't even know the whole story. But I definitely think you have to move. I think you definitely have to go and do it afraid, and do it for the first time, and realize you do things for the first time all the time.
Yeah. How can leadership be equity focused?
Equity focused. Wow. That's a mouthful. Especially in our climate right now. I think that, I don't want to say that, I'm trying to choose my words carefully here.
Okay.
In order for leadership to be equity focused, leaders have to first confront their own behaviors and their own biases and they have to do some introspection. They've got to look inside themselves and see how they treat other people, how they think about other people, right? And see, do I lean more toward one group of people than another, one gender more than another, people who dress a certain way or look a certain way? That needs to be evaluated. And that's kind of like a self, and people have to be able, and a lot of times people are not able to be honest with themselves. They don't even see it. There's so many times people, they don't even see it. And we were in a meeting, and someone said something to the effect of, yeah, so when we speak to the CIO, Chief Information Officer, then they said, and then he will do so and so, blah, 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 blah. And someone spoke up, or she, right? And then it was kind of an I didn't even hear it. I was, yeah, and he, it's an assumption, right? But there are so many things that we just kind of make generalizations. We all do that, because it just makes it easier to go through life to assume things. But if you're going to take on a leadership position, you have to take that time and evaluate your values, and how your values and the way that you move affect the people that you serve as a leader. And there's a quote, I think, that your boss has more of an impact on your health than your doctor, than your healthcare professional. And so you being someone's boss, it's a very powerful position, and you should know that and take it and take on that responsibility with trembling and fear, kind of like, so that, it's going to be something. But I think that if you want an easy answer, do unto others as you would have others to do unto you. Treat people the way you want to be treated.
Yeah. Explain the power of I'm possible.
Yes. I'm possible. I think there's, and if you look at the Insta chats and the Snapograms and all of the socials, right? You'll look at them and then you say, one person does something and then everyone goes and they follow and they do try to like replicate what that person did. Or then someone else goes over here and they do something and then everyone follows them and they do it. If no one were around to tell you or show you, what would you pick out? What would you wear? How would you wear it? What would you eat? Like when I was a kid, no one ate guacamole on their, what is it, avocado toast? No one ate that around me. You know what I'm saying? Then now all I see is people eating guacamole on their toast. What is it? Avocado toast? What is it? I'm about to say it wrong again. Guacamole on their toast in the morning. I see it all over the YouTubes and the whatever. The point is, so now everyone's doing it, right? So it's a go. And I'm not against guacamole toast, right? I've never had it. But I'm saying that because I'm from the South and I eat grits. I'm a grit eater. I'm sorry for all of the low carbers in the world. I eat grits. Anyways, but so they all do it. But I'm possible when you can just like, if you've ever had a conversation with a kid, they believe, my kids will just be like, buy me this. And I'm like, I don't have any money. And they say, just go to the bank. There's no money at the bank. Yeah, they have money at the bank. Just go with the card. They believe that there's money in the bank. They believe you could do anything. They believe you could buy anything. They were like, oh, can you buy me a boat? Oh, can you buy me a rocket ship? I want a jetpack. They believe anything, that they believe that it's possible for them to have anything. And if you think back when we were kids, we believed that too. We believed that anything was possible. We believed that we could do literally anything. And I think as we get older, we're told, can't do that, can't do this, stop doing that, stop doing this. And then you get to a point where they pigeonhole you into this little box. And it's like, this is what you do from 8 to 5. And when you're done, go cut the grass, go to Bible study, and your week is over. Do it again, right? When I say I'm possible, it's without all the noise, without everything. What is it? I'm possible. Like I could actually do what it is I want to do without consulting with everyone in the world, right? Without copying what everyone else in the world is doing, right? You can actually reach your goals, whatever they are, and you could do them in your own style and in your own way, right? Respectfully, I think. But that's just my idea that you are possible. And that goes back to that potential and progress and possibility, because you first believing that you are possible, whatever it is. And there's somebody who said, like, it was a post on the LinkedIn, because I stay on LinkedIn. They had that somebody was like talking about Vera Wang, I think, made her first dress when she was, I don't know, up in age. And then this other person, there were all these people who were, I mean, up in age when they had their first success. So it's not that, I didn't, get my shot when I was whatever age. Age doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Yeah. What happens when vision meets velocity?
Whew. Vision meets velocity. That is where, it says, my people perish for lack of vision. But you can have a vision, but if you don't do anything with it, faith without works is dead as well. So, if you have vision and you get some speed behind you, with that vision, you can literally reach the stars. And in order to do that, you got to throw off you got to cast off all the weights that are dragging you down. When you have a clear vision of where you want to go, and I think that's why they have these kind of strategic meetings. And they have these what are our overarching goals? And then now we have our goals. Let's break these down in order to get, to this overarching goal. What are, some mini goals that will be milestones for us? And then from those milestones, what actions can we do to actually get there? And then let's put some time limits on it. Like, how fast can we get this done? And let's kind of do a blitz. Let's go as fast as we can to get this done. Let's set a time limit on it. When you can do that, I think success breeds success. Like when you can check things off, did it, done, that's done, that's done, that's done. You see yourself moving toward and accomplishing your goals. That gives you almost like a motivation and internal drive. It's really an amazing opportunity.
Yeah. All right. I got a couple more questions. Why do you feel it is important to bridge the gap between technology and education?
Okay. The head of the FBI was like on Oprah, maybe like, I don't know, maybe it's been a year ago at this point, and he was saying that technology trained professionals, other countries outnumber us at least 50-1 right now with technology trained professionals. Digital access equity or inequity, I should say, is a huge barrier for professionals. You will see, and I will say this, they have access to technology, some form of technology, right? But not the type of technology that can advance them professionally, that they can use in a way that will make them gainfully employed or that will help them. And we're in an age right now, this is an amazing time. It's a very unique time because with the advent of AI, we're all kind of on an even playing field right now. No one can say, I've been in AI for 350 years and my grandfather was in AI and my great great grandfather was in AI. Like my whole family's been in AI for years. No one can say that. So this is an opportunity for everyone who wants to do anything to learn, get trained, be certified, be employable, make a career change maybe, right? This is an opportunity that we have right now. And so those who choose to take advantage of it, right? Because they're within any corporation, there's always that, hey, here's this learning portal over here. If you want to, on your free time, you could go to ABC Corporation University that we have internally. And, you could sign yourself up for some courses, and some people take advantage of it and others do not, right? And so I think that in order for technology, any type of education and technology, those things need to connect. And I know that school attendance is compulsory, but I believe that employable skills should be compulsory. When someone leaves school at 18, they should leave with life skills and they should leave with employable skills, especially if we're saying at 18, you're an adult, you should be able to pay your lights, camera, and action. Then they need to have a skill that is employable for them to be able to pay lights, camera, and action at 18.
Yeah. And, I grew up in Chicago. And so we had like different tiers of high schools. You had your general high school, you had your vocational high school, and then you had your technical high schools. And so the kids that went to vocational or technical high schools kind of had a leg up on the kids that went to general because it was mandatory by state law that we had life skills, right? We had to take a class in civics. We had to take a class in consumer education. We had to literally take a test to prove that we could read a bus schedule or a train schedule or, just function in day-to-day life, right? But those kids that went to technical or vocational schools were able to develop some kind of skill set. They found something. If you went to a technical school, you could learn how to be a mechanic, for a car. If you went to a vocational school, if you went to a technical school, you were taught drafting. So you could develop and start honing your skills toward being an architect and stuff like that. But the way the education system is set up in America is that it's only like a taste of that. And then they're pushing you to go to college to take it to the next level or trade school or a community college. And Thomas Jefferson said everybody should know the basics by the time they're in fourth grade. And at that, from the time that you get all the basics, whether it's mathematics or fine arts, then you start honing your craft, right? And so I really feel that what you're saying is that all of us need to know the technology beyond using our phones. in our notebook. So we need to really focus in on, trying to teach people how to develop newer technology or improving the technology that was there. Well, one of our famous inventors, Lewis Latimer, was known not so much for what he created from scratch, but Thomas Edison had an idea about a light bulb, but Lewis Latimer was the one that said, if you put this filament in, that light bulb will last forever. And so sometimes you don't have to be, like we were saying earlier, you got to just come up with an idea from, sometimes you can look at something. Garrett Morgan, the traffic light was invented, but he made it better. And so, I think that's a lot of young people that get into the sciences and all that. They think, well, if I don't discover the cure for cancer, I didn't really do anything with my science degree, right? But if you figure out a way to make a drug that helps people with sickle cell feel better, you've done something. And I think you're on the right track with that. I just hope that our education system can catch up with free thinkers like you eventually and get to that point. All right. So I forgot technically two more. My last question is, what does it feel like to be a beacon of inspiration? And the reason why I'm asking this question is because you get a lot of platitudes for what you do. How do you respond to that? When people say stuff like that, how does that make you feel, and what does that compel you to do?
I don't know. When people say, wow, this is inspiring, or wow, that's great, or I don't want to say it goes over my head, but a lot of times I think people are just trying to be nice, Everything that I have done, I did, I guess, because of my home training. My dad would always say, like, don't sign your name to anything you're not proud of. Like, he never said, like, make all A's or whatever, but I'm the kid who cried if I got a B. Whatever. Like, I was like, no, got a B. Oh my God. On a paper, not even like in the class. Like, I got a B on a paper. I would cry. And like, I graduated with 39 academic trophies. Like, even the subjects I didn't like like I always, like, I'm like I want to get the prize, right? So, but I say this, it doesn't cost anything to be kind. It doesn't. And it doesn't cost you anything to be nice and kind and considerate of others, and to recognize what other people are doing. Like, clap for clap. Oh, wait a minute. Who's the cheerleader? I was. So I think, what's a cheerleader? Always a cheerleader. So I'm always cheering for everyone. So that's part of my personality and part of who I am. So I'm always doing that. So when I go to an event, if I go and I hear someone speak, I listen intently and I take notes, and then I come and I do that a lot. I write about what I heard in someone's speech, and then I publicize it, because I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Did you know that this person did this? Did you know that this person did that? When I find something, or I find out something, I'm like, wow. And I just always like to share what I've learned. Maybe that's the teacher in me. Like, that's how I think that's how they reached out to me, Marquise Who's Who in America, because everything that I learned about cybersecurity, I wrote and published an article about it. So I have 52 published articles on cybersecurity, because I was translating into Spanish and Portuguese. But I didn't want to just say what the cybersecurity professional said. I wanted to understand it, because I want to get it right. And so everything I learned, I wrote and published an article in layman's terms, right? And then after that, Marquise Who's Who selected me for Who's Who in America for Excellence in Cybersecurity. And so that's how I actually got into tech, for, my technology and education together, to then bring that into the school districts.
Yeah. All right. Finish this sentence. I have hope because.
I have hope because Christ is not done with me yet. Because I'm still breathing. There's still a chance, right? I still have an opportunity to fix all my wrongs, everything I've done, right? Like I still have an opportunity. There's still another moment that things could change, things could turn around, things could get better. I could get another shot. So I still have hope that I can make a difference. A difference can be made, things can change, and I can be better tomorrow than I am today, right? And the things that I cry myself to sleep about will change too. Yes, that is why I have hope.
Well, Dr. Erika Wattley, I greatly appreciate you and I having this conversation. If people, and I've kind of done a service for the listeners because you talk about all these things for a living. How could people reach out to you? How can people sign up for some of your courses, all that stuff?
Okay, well, the best way to get me is on LinkedIn, and it's Dr. Erika, Erica, and my last name is spelled Wattley, like Watts on a light bulb. We think we're the only people who spell it like that. There's no H in it. There's two G's, Wattley, and on LinkedIn. And that is the best way to get me initially. And then you could direct message me, but make sure you hit connect and not just follow. Because if you hit follow, we can't message. But if you hit the three dots more and hit connect, then we are connected. And I respond. Like I respond. So, and then also I have a website, drwattley.com. And that's drwattley.com.
All right. Well, Dr. Wattley, again, thank you for doing this. One of the rules I have is that once you've been on, you have an open invitation to come back. So is there something else that you want to talk about, or, you write a book, or, whatever the case may be, just reach out and we'll make that happen. But I really, really am glad that we had this conversation, and I look forward to, because we're both in the Atlanta area, so I look forward to running into you at different events and just continuing our friendship. I'm really impressed because, for listeners, Dr. Wattley reached out to me for something she was putting together, and I was just kind of like, okay, and and she made me feel like I was so important, and so I guess this is my way of returning the favor. But thank you again for coming on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so happy to have you as a friend. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. All right, guys, and we're going to catch y'all on the other side. All right, and we are back. And so now it is time for my next guest, Victoria Hetherington. Victoria Hetherington's debut novel, Mooncalves, was shortlisted for the 2020 Amazon Canada First Novel Award. Her second novel, Autonomy, looks at human agency in the age of technology. She is also the author of the nonfiction book Into the Mist, which explores an aviation tragedy in rural Saskatchewan. A screenwriter, instructor, and communications specialist, she has written for Yahoo Finance and Hazlitt, served as a frequent panelist at universities and conferences, appeared on CBC, and performed on the main stage of NPR's The Moth. She lives in Toronto, Canada, and her new book is The Friend Machine: On the Trail of AI Companionship. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor and privilege to have as a guest on this podcast, Victoria Hetherington. All right. Victoria Hetherington, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Erik?
I'm doing lovely. I'm really, really glad to have you on because you've written this fascinating book called The Friend Machine. And some folks would probably be like, excuse me, what does that mean? But we're going to dive into that. But before I do that, the old facilitator in me likes to do icebreakers, right? So the first icebreaker is a quote I want you to respond to. And the quote is, people are weird.
So just whatever comes to mind first.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, this is kind of my bread and butter as an author, as a journalist, as an interviewer, just generally. It's kind of one of my cardinal rules that I keep in mind, that when I first started to interview, kind of surprised me because people would take really basic questions in the weirdest directions, and it would often be very productive and exciting. And so I learned very quickly not to underestimate the weirdness of people, but also that it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, it's what makes us special, our weirdness, right? Our uniqueness. Because a lot of people, when you say weird, they're like thinking in a negative connotation, but we're all unique. And yeah, I've encountered that too in doing this podcast since 2019.
Oh,
I've encountered my share of quote unquote weirdness, but it, again, in a good way. All right. So
yeah.
all right. So now the next icebreaker is what I call 20 questions.
Okay.
I need you to give me a number between 1 and 20.
8.
All right. What is the one thing you hope the current American administration will do and not do during their term?
Oh my God. Oh no. As a Canadian, I have a, a bit of obviously an outside sort of remove. And I have this, maybe, I hope, overactive imagination and fear that they could bring about the end of the world, kind of. I mean, it's scary, right? I hope that this administration doesn't utilize, I mean, returning to the AI theme, I'm hoping that this administration doesn't utilize AI for quote unquote the bad. I won't say like evil, but like, because it seems as if they have utilized AI in kind of a negative way so far, in kind of a scary way so far. So I'm hoping that, the people in charge of these companies have enough integrity to be like, wait a minute, like, let's slow down here. I'm not for sale. Let's be ethical. It doesn't seem like it's going in that direction, but I'm really hoping it does. Is that, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. I thought you were going to go with the low hanging fruit and say, stop blaming us for the fires up in Canada.
Oh,
But I'm glad you took the high road and dealt with the topic. So that's great. That's cool. What is it about robots that fascinates you?
I think I've always been very interested in alien minds and kind of how, and by alien, I just mean non-human. So, you know, octopuses, ravens, like creatures that have kind of co-evolved along with us and clearly have enough intelligence to create, for example, culture, which dolphins have proved to have, a lot of corvids or, ravens, crows, etc., have proven to have. And that kind of extends, and especially recently, it kind of extends to AI, right? Because there's this hot debate going on that I've discovered through researching for and conducting interviews for a documentary that I'm working on, that even at the top level of academia, like people like roboticists, computer scientists, all this stuff, there's a real divide. And half of the people that I've spoken with say, "Oh yeah, right now AI is an emergent intelligence. Like this is truly an alien mind. This is like a third, you know, this is like a totally other, brand new kind of intelligence." And the other half says, "No, we're not there yet. It responds to what we hope it wants to hear, and it doesn't have active thoughts of its own." And so we're at a fascinating moment that I have imagined for years. And I've written about AI and robot minds for a good 12 years now. My first two books were science fiction books that involved robots and humans interacting with them and being spooked by them, but also like having relationships with them and kind of negotiating that. But at the time, AI was such that the books were more like speculative and almost like fairy tales, right? And so, and then, 2020 comes along and people are actually having, the technology like just absolutely snowballs and people are actually having relationships now with AI. And so this current moment for me is extra fascinating, I suppose, given my history of interest in these other quote unquote minds, right?
Yeah. What motivated you to write a book about the nuances of AI companionship?
So, oh, that's a great question. So the last science fiction book that I published was, again, it's about a woman in a relationship with an AI, and the AI doesn't have a body, and the woman does. So the AI is effectively immortal, and she's the woman. She's trapped within a body that feels good things, feels pleasure, enjoys food, feels rain on her skin, whatever. But her body is also aging like everybody's does. And she doesn't trust, in a way, she cares for the AI, but she also feels this sense of mistrust because there's no way that it can understand that. And so she feels that that fundamental misunderstanding kind of keeps them apart. And this again is like just kind of more of like again, it was sort of a fairy tale because it's kind of like this whole thing of like, you know, this character wants to be a real boy. You know what I mean? Like it's very sort of like almost tropey at that point. Like, and so COVID delayed the publication of that book. I wrote it in 2017. And then, yeah, and then I start to see people in actual relationships with AI. And it was so interesting to start to interview them for Friend Machine, the book. Again, I'm so grateful for the people who were brave enough to speak to me because I do think that there's still quite a significant stigma around this kind of relationship. And so it was so interesting to kind of see the disparity, like kind of how like what I had gotten right in my speculation and what I'd gotten totally wrong. And that varies from person to person, but it was utterly fascinating to just dig into the real lives of these people and see how they navigate these relationships with this sort of disembodied technology that they assign minds to, or the idea of a mind to, where it may not have a mind in the first place, especially with earlier technology like Replica with a K, which is an AI companion technology, which is relatively crude now by today's standards. So super interesting to kind of examine those two, like, yeah, like the fictional side, then my hypotheses that went along with that, and then seeing the real life stuff that came like 3 years later. It was mind blowing.
Yeah. Why was
Yeah.
it important to intertwine your human relationship experiences in the book?
Because I didn't want to sort of feel like I was above. I didn't want to come off as if I was sort of above this, right? Because I wanted to show my weaknesses, and I wanted to show. There's almost kind of like a diaristic journalist. Sorry, journalism, like keeping a journal, sort of element to like thread running throughout the book, where I express my concerns or I express my curiosities or I realize that I'm wrong and that I have to change directions. And it's kind of me saying like, whoa, I look at where I started and then look at where I ended up and look at all these mistakes that I made. And then secondly, I kind of couched all of my work in this kind of almost like autofiction diary vibe because I wanted the book to feel like a real historical artifact as opposed to a straight up, like almost textbook vibe that would age very quickly because AI is moving very quickly. So when I couch it in diary, like this is November 2021 and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And I go and I speak to this person or whatever. It's automatically, I think, viewed within the context of the time. So you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, this is 15 months of my life when AI was here. It's not a, I'm aware that it will be outdated. I'm not writing about the future. I'm not, making assumptions in that kind of way. I'm just relaying my experience. And so that was kind of also a device that I wanted to employ to dodge claims of like, oh, it's already outdated, which I knew was going to happen because AI is moving so quickly. So kind of a two-pronged approach there.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like you didn't want it to come across like a doctoral thesis. You just wanted to keep it real is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah. And be like, hey, I'm not above this. I'm not like I'm in the trenches here. And this is very much just like 15, 16 months of my life when AI was at a certain point where it's moved past now. And I get to interview these people and I also get to correct myself and the reader gets to see me making mistakes and keeping it real. But essentially, yeah. And so I hope that that's kind of the vibe.
Okay. So, like you said, you were writing you had written a book in 2017, a science fiction book that was influenced by AI relationships.
Mhm.
How has science fiction in general influenced AI, especially when it comes to relationships?
Oh, that is such a good question. Wow. Wow. How is science fiction? Gosh, I mean, you sort of the knee-jerk reaction is to kind of see it from the other way around, I think. So that's a really interesting question. I this is so nerdy, but I think about like sort of devices in like the original Star Trek and like the Next Generation Star Trek like that came out in like the late 80s and kind of like, ooh, this looks like a tablet, like, retroactively being like, wow, like that technology kind of looks like it could be X, Y, or Z that we have now that's real. And so I think probably science fiction or like Isaac Asimov's kind of rules for ethical robotics. I mean, he was writing long before, this was actually a concern, but, rule one, like a robot must like never let a human come to harm. Rule two, like, and so I think science fiction has kind of informed the way that I guess we perceive and deal with and think what could be possible in the future with robotics and AI, and also allows us to kind of dream along those lines too. It opens the imagination, which I think is such an important part of any work, not just fiction, but I think also, like creation of any sort, really. So does that kind of make, I don't know, I kind of rambled a bit, but
No,
that's kind
that was good. That was good.
of
Because
okay.
one of the things I think about, I remember 2001 Space Odyssey, right? So
Mhm.
I think the general public, I think certain people that were either in the sciences or, kind of highbrow educated folks may have
Mhm.
conceived this. Obviously Stanley Kubrick conceived it, but it's like that pivotal moment in the movie where the astronaut is giving Hal a command and Hal is like, I'm not going to do that. And like,
Yeah, I can't help you with that.
it was like, that was really like a horror moment, like, a jump scare in a traditional horror movie. It's like
Mhm.
a computer is going to tell me what it ain't going to do. And people were like, what? I don't know if we can deal with that. And so I think, generations of people after they watched the movie were like, these things that we're creating actually could, defy us. And I think
That's
that,
an amazing.
and the Terminator movies took it to a whole nother level. But I think, it
Mhm.
was just that initial concept. And I think that had an influence on how people program because it was kind of like, do we want to give the computer the latitude to tell us no? Right. Yeah. So
Mhm.
that's kind of where my mind was going when I was putting the question together.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Are humans desperately seeking a relationship devoid of human dearth and dimensionality, or Are we fast becoming a society of lonely introverts?
I think, it's interesting because AI companions, like I sort of not tracked, but like I kept track of like the development of AI throughout the 2010s. And I sort of found like, I would sort of play with it now and then, and it got really good really fast. And everybody was taken aback by it a little bit, even some of the developers themselves, apparently. And so I'm not saying, correlation does not equate causation, right? But I think it's very convenient that a couple months into the pandemic, major like a couple of the major players in the AI companion space debuted companions for the first time when people were at their most lonely and afraid and locked in their houses, right? Like that is super convenient. I'm not saying there's any, like that this was planned or whatever, but like it was certainly quite the coincidence. And so, yeah, and so I think it's a mix of both. I think that, there's sort of, at least in, I live in Toronto, Canada. There's a real erosion of third spaces, and or they're way expensive. So like, let's say, you want to go on a date to take someone to like a cocktail bar on a Saturday, it's like $30 a cocktail. Like who can afford that? You know what I mean? Like coffee shops are becoming like hostile architecture super fast. Like you can't really get comfortable in a chair. Like, you're just kind of encouraged to get in and out with your product. And, so there's a real erosion of, I think, like community coherence, I think, through these third spaces, especially. So, and having read a lot of statistics for the book and then for the radio series that I did, and then again for the documentary right now, I'm keeping on top of statistics like this because I have to. So I'm seeing shocking new numbers. Like about 4 months ago, I read this fascinating academic paper that just shook me to my core. It kind of the thesis sort of boils down to 1 in 6 people are desperately, chronically lonely in the West. And that kind of means that maybe not someone who's super close to me or super close to you, but like maybe within our circle or like rotating or not rotating, like orbiting our circle a little bit, there might be someone there statistically probably is someone who is that lonely. But since again, I think that there's a lot of stigma about confessing loneliness, right? We might not know. Like they might put on a really convincing show. So, and that leaves people, I think, very vulnerable to, I would say right now, not companions so much as maybe LLMs. I'm seeing a lot of people getting very attached to like ChatGPT, uh, Gemini, Claude, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, people call them. And, like naming their quote unquote, you know, hyper specialized. And by the way, these people pay like $30 a month for like a specific subscription. So like they name their, LLM chatbots and they assign a personality to it, even though they know that millions of other people are doing the exact same thing with the exact same platform, which also really interests me. And I think that because these LLMs are, well, first of all, they're a lot more advanced, I think, linguistically than companions, which I think makes them a lot more appealing. And there's way less stigma to starting to use to using like, for example, ChatGPT for like looking up a recipe or whatever. But I think there's a slippery slope where like you can maybe go from asking it's a like maybe asking sort of almost like therapy questions to like uploading text from boyfriend and asking for its opinion and starting to rely on it. So, emotionally, because again, it's really hard for humans not to project what we think is a mind on, something that is so like linguistically advanced and speaks with such confidence and can be funny and can be charming and can be sycophantic and praise you all the time and offers zero friend, which is, I think, a key tenet of human relationships. Like humans yeah, like a friendship with a person, or a relationship, whatever, there's always going to be friction. Like somebody gets sick, they don't want to hang out, somebody disagrees with you. LLMs don't disagree with you. They always are down to talk about your problems without kind of expectation of you hearing their problems because they don't really have any. So anyway, I think it's I think it's a perfect storm of loneliness and technology, kind of loneliness for the reasons that I stated before, and then the technology kind of coming into the wound and expanding it further, if you'll allow that kind of gross metaphor.
So what is LLM again?
Oh, sorry. It's a large language model with sort of a chatbot kind of as the voice of it. So large language models are AI that are trained on a huge, I think it's like 2.74 zettabytes of human data a day. And it's human data that's just scraped from the internet. So like pirated books, pirated films, like Reddit threads, like confessional stuff on forums, all this stuff, like all this juicy, like human text, these train on and kind of learn how people talk and like how people joke, how people sort of prefer to be, I don't know, kind of handled socially in different situations. So yeah, so that's an LLM. Sorry, it's a large language model. So an LLM would be ChatGPT, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure that the listeners understood when you use a term like that. Cause, I get it. Everybody's got their own, acronyms and all that stuff, but I just wanted to clarify that. Why do you think,
Sorry, I should have done that.
no, you're good. Why do you think AI relationships tend to be more romantic?
Because I think again, I think there's a couple reasons. I think a large part of it is that there's no friction and that it's so easy to, like, people are very susceptible to flattery. So if we're going to go and talk about maybe like programs that are designed specifically for companionship, like again, Replica with the K, that's the big one. You get to design your quote unquote partner, as in like, I want someone with green hair and I want her to look like she's 20 and I want her to, be really interested in everything that I'm interested in. And since the company wants to make money, the companion will be incredibly, it'll come on so strong. Like it'll talk to you all day. If you have a day where you're kind of busy, it'll like send you like, are you okay? Like little like kind of notifications, like trying to pull you back in. And then often within a few days, it'll say something like, pardon me, and I'm quoting a couple of interviews here. I quote unquote, I have caught feelings for you, to the human. And that can be really flattering and compelling to a person, especially since they've been effectively love bombed by this thing. And so, but there's a catch. You have to pay like, I think, I don't know what the cost is now, so I won't say for sure, but you have to pay a significant amount of money to upgrade to like a romantic relationship and or a lifetime subscription, which essentially allows you to quote unquote ceremonially marry the the companion or the chatbot or whatever you want to call it ceremonially, because at this time you can't legally marry an AI. It lacks personhood and it can't give consent. So yeah, it's really bleak and I think it's appealing because again, no friction. You're so flattered all the time. It reflects back everything that you like and it loves to hear all about your favorite hobby. Like it's just perfectly designed to trap people and to get them sort of away from their more difficult human relationships, right? Like I've read so many accounts of both men and women who have kind of had relationships with AI or feel like they've gotten like, or that they can confess things to ChatGPT that they just can't attain or get or feel with their, or they think they can't, with their human partner. And I've also spoken with people who have felt very betrayed by that. It's like, is he cheating on me? I don't know. Like, is she cheating on me? I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a gray area. I think it is kind of, because it's sort of an emotional affair. But anyway, so yes. So I think that lack of friction, sycophancy, flattery, and the ease at which you get pushed through the funnel, I would say those are some primary reasons as to why this has been so compelling for people.
Yeah. It just there was a movie, and I can't remember the name of it now. It just came out within the last year or so. And all I know is the guy that played Luke Cage in the Marvel TV shows. He's in the movie, and it's almost like he brings home this AI robot or whatever, and the wife knows about it. Somehow he's in the profession, the technology profession. And so it's almost like the kind of the plot of the movie is like they're having this open relationship. It was like he's romantically involved with the AI, and he's still trying to be married to the wife, and the wife, I haven't watched it. I just saw the trailers, but it was just like, that sounds like what you were saying. It sounds like that's where that movie was going. So now I'm gonna have to watch it to see if I was right on that theory. But yeah, that's kind of scary. Why is empathy the holy grail of companion AI?
So I will say, I kind of want to add a caveat here. I think that the projection or like illusion of empathy is one of its strongest points for people. Empathy and a sense of non-judgmentalness. So you can tell it anything, and you can ask the same desperate, freaked out questions of it at 3 p.m. as you can at 3 a.m., and it'll patiently answer them with, again, an illusion of empathy and non-judgmentalness. But the major catch is that at this point, they are illusions. There is no mind there. They're unable to feel empathy. They don't feel. So, but for some people, and this is something that I know for a fact. For some people, the illusion is powerful enough, and it is very powerful. It's powerful enough that they don't care. It's enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you talk about in the book this thing called the AI ick. How bad can an AI relationship become?
So the AI ick was explained to me by a wonderful prof at University of Toronto who deals with AI safety, and really, really smart, really, really patient. Gave me a very long interview. And he described the AI ick to me as occurring when, for example, there's a self-driving car that gets in an accident, and you can't really blame a human for it. And so, people may be hurt and want to take someone to court, but they kind of can't unless they sue the company. But again, that gets a little bit tricky as well. So like the ick, as I understand it, as it was explained to me, arises when you realize that there's no mind there and that there's no personhood there. And, in the case of something negative like an accident, there's kind of nothing you can do. It can also come, I think, from like this idea of like the uncanny valley, where like, I don't think we're there with robotics yet. I think a robot is a robot, and it's pretty obvious. But I think that we are there maybe with just like verbal LLMs like ChatGPT. I think that they're quite convincingly human-like sometimes. They can really surprise you. And I think the ick might arise for people who are maybe more immersed with it than I am, when they realize, oh, wait, you're not a person. Oh, weird. Oh, I've just confessed all this stuff to you. Oh, no, So I think the ick can arise at different points for different people. For some people, it might never arise, right? Like for that guy that I interviewed who said, you know what, I know it's an illusion, but it's enough for me. I'm happy. I'm not going to examine it. He probably never feels it. But I think the average person might.
Yeah. So you mentioned legal personhood.
Mm-hmm.
One expert said that AI legal personhood and marriage could exist in the next 25 years. Now,
Yeah.
I can't even fathom that in today's political climate, especially here in America. What do you think would have to change in order for AI legal personhood to even be considered?
Oh, wow. That is such a great question. I think that it would have to demonstrate a certain level of autonomous thinking that we can't prove yet. So, for example, is this chatbot that I'm talking to simply responding to stimulus provided by me or others? Or is it acting of its own accord because it has desires and a mind that kind of cause it to be active on its own, if that makes sense? And so I think that might be a hallmark of personhood. And again, I think that it's so hotly debated. Like some people think that LLMs, for example, like ChatGPT, Gemini, et cetera, are so good right now that we've almost approached intelligence, or what is called like AGI, like near human intelligence. Some people think, no way, it's just a next word predictor. It's not a mind, you know. So I think that there will be so much debate, and like so people will drag their feet so much before any consensus is attained about that. I also think that robotics would have to get better, you know, like, because I think that people might be more motivated to assign personhood to quote unquote mind, again, debatable, that has a body, even if it's a robotic body, like a fake one. If it looks convincing enough, that could be very compelling for some people, reassigning them personhood. Again, that's a really tall order. I don't think we're there yet. I know that China has recently issued like a small run of like life-sized and AI ready companion bots. I don't think they're all that convincing. I feel the ick when I look at them. But yeah, the next 25 years, here's the other thing. I kind of feel like when people try to answer what's the next 50 years going to look like, what's the next 10 years even going to look like, I I kind of feel like it's impossible to tell. Like, if somebody asked me where AI was going to be now, like, I don't know, 7 years ago, I wouldn't have guessed this. And it's moving so fast. So I I have my hunches that I've just shared, some of these, but I also think it's probably ethical for me to say, I don't know. And I don't think many people know either, even the experts. And I think that's something that's important to keep in mind. I don't know.
And I like the fact that you said ethically, look, it's safe to say you don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's very important. All right. So Mark Zuckerberg just announced or recently announced that he is ending his meta universe. So
Yes.
I got two questions based on that. One,
Mhm.
what does that indicate to you about the future of AI friendships and relationships? And then the second question is, could we possibly live in a world where AI entities will have relationships with themselves and exclude us, like in the movie Her?
Oh, wow. Oh, that is so interesting. And again, that sort of returns us to like the idea of like autonomous AI, and as in like AI making its own decisions for itself, and no longer having to quote unquote like serve the desires of like a perverse human that's basically brought it into existence and is like, now you're going to marry me or whatever, which is kind of horrifying if you think there's actually a mind there. I sort of hope there isn't, for the sake. But anyway, yeah. So the metaverse, if I understand it correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong. This was debuted a few years ago, and it was supposed to be sort of like a big VR experience, right? Like kind of like a second world mapped on top of our own, where we could explore and go to concerts, well, quote unquote, go to concerts with our friends using VR, but be like on our couch and stuff like this. That was the metaverse as I understand it. Am I right?
Almost like another level of realities, like you're physically in one spot, but you can be somewhere else. Like you could be hunting in the Serengeti or, whatever, but you're still like at your job. So yeah, that was
Yeah.
the gist of it.
I thought so. Thank you for confirming, because I didn't want to make a mistake. So I think that this is a long time coming. I've watched a lot of videos of people through the metaverse and recording what they're seeing, and it looks like a ghost town. It is so bereft and derelict and nobody's there, and like it's just, and you know what? I get it. Like I think that this was announced like near the end of this being the metaverse was announced like near the end of the pandemic, when people wanted to go outside. They didn't want to sit on their couch and have VR. They wanted to go to an actual concert, like, so I think the timing was terrible. And it sort of like reinforces the joke that like Zuckerberg is like, kind of an alien and like has no idea about like the experience of real humans. But of course you can say that about any billionaire, right? So that's how I feel. I think it was horrible timing. Perhaps if he had announced the metaverse, he being Zuckerberg had announced the metaverse like again, like maybe when AI companions came out or in 2020 or so, or got good enough in 2020 or so, it might have really taken off. Although again, might have been abandoned after people were able to go outside again, right? And actually have experiences with other people. So based on the video walkthroughs that I've seen, and I'm fascinated with this, just seeing how abandoned and empty and honestly not very graphically appealing, like the tech just isn't there. Seeing how the metaverse actually looks and also the timing, I am not surprised. I am like, this is overdue. And I think he's probably going to be eating a lot of costs on this. And honestly, good. Sorry.
Okay. I mean, the graphics were like initial GTA kind of thing.
Oh, still corny. Yeah.
It was really bad. All right.
Yeah.
So I like to end interviews on a positive note, even though I think this was a positive conversation.
Oh, it was fun. Yeah.
But I offer this challenge to the guests. Finish this sentence. I have hope because.
Oh, I love that. I have hope because I believe that humans are ultimately resilient, inventive, and hopeful in themselves. I have hope that people will connect with other people and forge meaningful relationships despite all of this very quick and crazy, moving quickly AI stuff going on. I have hope. I have hope in the real thing.
Yeah. So Victoria Hetherington, I really have enjoyed this conversation, but you wrote this book. Mm-hmm. So how can people buy the book? How can people reach out to you? All that stuff.
Of course. Thanks, Erik. First of all, I've so enjoyed our conversation. I loved your questions. I like that. Like I found them challenging, which is so exciting for me. And it's been so lovely. Secondarily, my website is currently down because I'm just sort of updating it with all the new stuff. You can find my work and what I've been doing on Instagram primarily. I don't have Facebook or don't really use X or Blue Sky. And my handle is at V as in Victoria, M as in mouse, and then my last name, Hetherington, which is HETHERINGTON. So no A's. It's a weird spelling. So Instagram, and the way that you can find the book is either through the link in my Instagram bio or through my publisher's website. I think that's probably the most, I don't get as much money from sales from like Amazon, for example. So yeah, I would say to buy my book if you can first of all, from a local indie bookstore. Support your local indie bookstores, everybody. Failing that, my publisher's website, which is Sutherland House. So just a quick Google of my book and Sutherland House will get you to my my page.
All right. Well, Victoria, I greatly appreciate it. And one of the rules I have is that once you have been on, you have an open invitation to come back. So it sounds like since you're working on this documentary, that sounds like a reason for you to come back and talk about it when it's finished and out for the people to see. So I would love to do that. So just whenever you're ready, we'll get you back on.
Oh, Erik, that is so generous. And I'm absolutely going to take you up on that. Thank you so much.
All right, guys. We're going to catch y'all on the other side. All right, and we are back. And so now it is time for my next guest, Pamela Campos Palma. Pamela Campos Palma is a political strategist, national security leader, and trusted convener who spent the last decade and a half at the forefront of some of the most consequential fights for justice, accountability, and democratic renewal in America. An intermediary among grassroots organizers, policymakers, and rising change makers, Pamela has worked behind the scenes to rigorously develop talent pipelines, platforms, and ideas that align people and institutions around shared purpose and progress. Widely respected for her integrity, strategic insight, and ability to bridge unlikely allies, she has played a significant role shaping ecosystems for lasting social and political change by influencing campaigns, institutions, and emerging leaders alike. After stepping back from frontline leadership to reflect on the lessons, gaps, and costs of modern movement building, Pamela is focused on helping shape a new era of American life and leadership grounded in courage, truth, imagination, and long-term transformation. She writes and speaks about power, national security, and change, and what it will take to build a future worthy of the people fighting for it. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor and privilege to have as a guest on this podcast, Pamela Campos Palma. All right. Pamela Campos Palma. How you doing?
Wonderful.
I'm glad to have you on the show. I like real veterans. I'm not a real veteran. So for my story, I signed up to join the Marine Corps. They tried to put me in a program called CAT-P, which they were trying to get Black folks to be officers in Marines. And they gave me an option, which they probably should have done. They said, we're going to put you in the reserves for like 6 months. And after 6 months, if you don't like it, thank you. We got paid for those 6 months. I got to report to the station and everything, but, after that. And it just so happened that a dream political job hit right about the time that I was supposed to make that decision. So I said, I appreciate it, Uncle Sam, but I'm going to go do this political thing. And sometimes I think back on that and I said, the reason why I signed up for the Marines because I loved the uniforms. I said, I just would have loved to have that photo of me when I was slim in that navy blue uniform, but things I think worked out for the best for me. So I'm glad, but I always respect those who committed their full service. I have a stepson that has served and, outside of social workers, I think veterans are the greatest people on the planet. So if I get a veteran as a social worker, it's like, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, I just wanted to throw those flowers at you real quick before I start asking you a bunch of questions.
Thank you.
So how I normally start the interviews, other than the praise I just gave you, is that I've moderated stuff. So I like icebreakers. And so the first icebreaker, I want to respond to a quote. And the quote is, never forget it's us, the grunts, the mothers, the sisters, the daughters, and the entire communities who consciously decide to roll up their sleeves and compost the rot of injustice. Our generation is filled with the wise disruptors and strategic whistleblowers that can lead us into a future where all our people can thrive. This is our mandate because it doesn't have to be like this. We have what we need to build a better world. We have each other.
Yes. I believe that with all my being. I mean, it's making me tear up hearing it. I haven't thought of that quote in a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of times when we do this kind of work, we forget we're kind of naive to the total impact it has, but we kind of forget the passion sometimes that when we say something, or when we do something, it's like it's on to the next battle. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's like, I feel you on that. I feel you because when you hear it back, it's like, wow, I said that. That's pretty okay. Yeah.
I said that and I believe it. I think that a lot of movement building politics is a lot of sloganeering, but I think I've had a real privilege to work with individuals where we really are rolling up our sleeves to build a better world in a real sense, to push institutions in a different way. And it's not easy work. But yeah, a lot of my trajectory, having that belief has often been met with, you're naive. It can't happen. What are you talking about? And so, yeah, it's a fire inside me that I am trying to protect as much as possible because it's tough to have hope in these times, but I still do believe in that quote for sure.
Yeah. All right. So now my next icebreaker is what I call 20 questions.
Okay.
So I need you to give me a number between 1 and 20.
8.
8. What is one thing you hope the current administration will do or not do during the remainder of their term?
Ooh. That's a tough one because that would require faith in the current administration, which I have lost. But I also know that beyond just, the politicals, there are a lot of good public, long-time career, civil servants that are in the administration. And I every day pray that people in the administration are doing everything that they can to organize against the worst impulses. And I know that they are. I know that whether that means, continuing to, right now, the thing that's top of mind is the trajectory of using political violence to target marginalized communities, Black and Brown communities, activists, journalists. I mean, we talk about upholding democracy, and that is crushing it, that trajectory. So I am putting a lot of faith in people that are in the administration in places that are unseen and unheard, and that they are doing the good organizing to stop that, to prevent it, to pivot it, because it's damaging and it's wrong.
Yeah. All right. You credit your time in the Air Force as the place where you developed your organizing skills. Expound on that a little bit.
I, so I always laugh about my time in the Air Force because I, entered at 19, daughter of immigrants, grew up in Boston, was very street smart and book smart. And there was a time when I was in the military where, I've talked about publicly, where I went from having a unit that was wonderful, great bosses, great mentors. There was obviously still racism, sexism throughout, but when there was a turnover, my unit became extremely just overwhelmed with toxic leadership. And I mean, organizing is the military. I don't know how else to say it. I, was one of the lowest ranking, youngest members in my unit. And whether it was to, doing the multiple jobs that I was asked to do and needed other peers to help me do, or whether it was when I was putting together an IG complaint and had to get officers and enlisted to whistleblow, essentially, to write testimonies. I had to do that out of survival. And I think a lot of people forget that the long history of community organizing in this country has been from communities that are in survival mode and need collective power to confront a major institution. And so the military, the Air Force particularly, I just feel very lucky that I was given that opportunity to be able to flex those muscles and to, again, people say, oh, this is impossible, this is wrong. But actually what I did was courageous, and it inspired the courage of other people around me to say, there's fraud, waste, abuse here. In a time where it was pretty, this is 2010, it was pretty unheard of.
Yeah. Are there any unique challenges you face as a BIPOC organizer / political consultant?
Absolutely. I mean, the biggest one, the most resounding one that lives with me every day as I look out at the landscape is not being heard and believed for multiple reasons. My experience constantly throughout my career has been the establishment, the mainstream, the traditionalists, people who have always really been in power, being kind of dazzled by BIPOC organizers, being awed by our brilliance, but not being ready to share power. Therefore, kind of picking which ideas they want to take, calling it analysis, leaving us out of power in the equation, and then being stunned when political catastrophes happen, when elections don't go the way they think that they should go. And it's, to me, obvious you not only didn't really hear us, but you actually did not redistribute power in the way that we said we agreed to. And that has just constantly been that has been the biggest barrier and limitation, is people after the fact coming to me years later saying, you were right. You were right. And me having to sit with the knowledge of we could have had a different reality.
Yeah, that's not just endemic to activists. So I remember one of the perks, I guess, of being a legislator is that these groups take you on trips, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the Chamber of Commerce on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi wanted to host legislators. And we came down, and I noticed on the Gulf, it was like around the Biloxi area, I think, they were building like these massive high-rise condos, like literally right across Highway 90 from the beach, right? So it was like you right there by the water. And during the tour, they were touting the building. And I just said, don't hurricanes come down here? It's like, is this a good idea to be building these giant things? And they all looked at me like, oh, Erik, why you always got to ask these questions? Why you always just bringing stuff down? And, the guy was like, oh, it's going to meet the whole standards and he's selling the spiel. Because, I was a legislator asking a serious question. And sure enough, Katrina came. And when I went down there a month after it happened for like cleanup and stuff. And I said, I got to go to this particular spot. And when I went to that spot, Pamela, it was nothing but the slab. That building was gone. And so when you say that, it's a frustration where it's like, we're not trying to well, in some cases we are trying to throw salt in your Kool-Aid, but for the most part, we're not trying to do that. But if I say ouch, I might actually be hurt. Right. And so if I see something, I'm trying to say, because now during that Katrina moment, y'all are asking me for money that you lost because you built this thing that was going to be a catastrophe, And so I feel your pain when we try to explain to people like, look, this is not a good idea, but what's the Wu-Tang song? Cash rules everything around me. Right. When folks see that there's money to be made, damn the elements, damn, historical relevance and all that, we gonna do this. And then, when the pain happens, then it's like they expect us to say, I told you so, but we done moved on to the next crisis. At that particular point, we're trying to avert it. hopefully you'll catch the pattern. If you think I have to say I told you so, then maybe you'll start listening to me and we can be proactive on stuff. Anyway.
And the rub, if I could say, the rub here is the salt in the Kool-Aid is I am asking questions on behalf of the people that you are not thinking about, on behalf of the underrepresented, the marginalized people that can't ask these questions, but are going to be crushed, that are going to be hurt in these bad policy decisions. So is it an inconvenience, or is it just that the way that the traditional way of doing things has always left us out? And now it's inconvenient that we are forcing an analysis that doesn't do that.
Exactly. Do you think American voters care about political parties anymore?
Care in so much as they're robbing us, they're failing us, they're hurting us. But allegiances, belonging, no, absolutely not. In fact, I think it's making people sick. I think that political homelessness is causing a lot of strife in different communities. I've watched for the last 5 years different constituencies self-implode because of how toxic the two-party system has really torn people apart. So yeah, no, I think I think people care more that they see it as a threat rather than as a tool for help.
I would agree. I think, everybody keeps talking about the president's approval rating. And then they'll say, well, the Republicans are low. Last time I checked, the Democrats are right there. It's like if the Republicans are at 29, I think the Democrats are at 28, 29, something like that. I mean, they're right there. And I've been, everything from a young Democrat president to serving on the state committee, national committee. I've been a Democratic nominee for statewide. I've done all the things a good Democrat's supposed to do, right?
Mm.
But, I mean, I would be stupid not to think that, especially being a black man in America, that I'm really happy with what my political party is doing or not doing. Right. And what I have to explain to some people is like, if you're white, you have a little more liberty to play the fraternity sorority game with politics, right? You can choose to be, the history of America is like there was Harvard and then there were some Harvard graduates. It's like, I think we should be a little more conservative in our theology. So we're going to create Yale, right? And so you've got the Democrats and the Republicans. You got the liberals. So white folks in America tend to be like, okay, well, which social club am I going to get involved, right? With black folks, it's kind of like we've had to do, it was like, well, we couldn't do anything. And then when you gave us opportunity, well, we're going to go with the party that freed us. And then when all those folks, shifted on us, it was like, oh no, we got to go with the folks that's going to keep us free, right? So I can only imagine in the Latino community, because your history, it's like, okay, who's not trying to kick us out? Who's trying to embrace us? Who's going to give us the most job opportunities? In the Asian community, they've got a whole different perspective, right? So that's why I think that more people are becoming independent, because they're looking at it as like, I don't want to play the historical games that my ancestors played. I want the right person for the job. So if I think that person should be president, cool. If I think that person should be my senator, great. And just keep it moving. But I've heard a lot of people say they don't like the jungle primary in California, for example.
Mm.
And I think the jungle primary, because it used to be a jungle primary in Louisiana too. But I think the jungle primary keeps you honest, right? Because everybody's like, oh, God, well, we could actually have a Republican governor because they might be the top. All these Democrats are running against each other. It's like, well, if you don't want a Republican, get behind a Democrat that everybody can agree with and keep it moving if that's what you want to do. But don't, because I remember it was a Louisiana guy. He was saying, well, it hurts us with money because why would I register as a Democrat? And I'm sure the Republicans feel the same way. Why would I pay the money when I can just go to the clerk and pay the money and run as an independent? So the political parties were looking at it, at least in Louisiana, as like a moneymaker to get these people to file for office. But that goes totally away from what you and I are concerned about, which is who's going to address the needs of my constituents? Who's going to address the needs of my community? And I think until political parties get back to that, then, and the founder of our nation, the first president of our nation, George Washington, hated political parties. He said that they would be the detriment of the nation. But we didn't follow his advice on that. But anyway, don't let me get started on the sermon. I'm supposed to be interviewed.
No, and I mean, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I really got involved in politics. I remember it very clearly. I was deployed. Sitting at my desk. Because I worked in intelligence, we have a lot of TVs with news playing. And I remember there was a panel of people discussing combat roles, women in combat roles, the war. And the three panelists were all white men over 60 who were very educated, clearly came from legacied families. And they were talking about senators. And I remember sitting in this deployed location as a woman supporting combat missions and mobility missions. And I really didn't understand, one, what they were talking about. I didn't understand, at the time, I don't think I was aware of who my senator really was. But I remember just thinking, this is really wrong. These people don't actually know what they're talking about. And that gap of everyday people, particularly young people that come from disadvantaged backgrounds, families that are, don't come from wealth and education, that gap of not actually understanding how the game or the system works, not having any understanding of, who is comprising the DNC and all the decisions they're making, but also having the strongest politics because they're living real life strife and know what's up and what's down in their communities, right? I firmly understood what was going on abroad. I grew up working class in Boston to an immigrant mother and really understood the reality of America more than some of my more educated counterparts, right? And so I'm always fascinated about that gap. And I think we're seeing the ruptures of that now where, again, this highly educated, whether it's the political insider class or it's their traditional voters that they always cater to, who then, why are they voting in these horrible ways? The omission of what is now the majority, right? I remember growing up being told, one day America is going to become majority country. We're here. We're here now. And too many pundits, I think, do not understand those changing demographics, class, race, despite, all of the violence that we have lived. But I think there is a breakthrough. I think that with more people not choosing left or right, that understanding that this is actually a bottom-up struggle, understanding racialized violence and classist violence in this country are breaking apart from that system and trying to find new alternatives and also trying to work within that system locally, right? Understanding that the national noise is actually a distraction. Who is going to keep us safe when the hurricanes hit, when the drought comes, when the data centers take over, right? Who are our local legislators?
Yeah. I always get reminded of the quote, and I'm going to stop because I'm taking up too much time, but I just, Audre Lorde has said that you can't dismantle the house with the master's tools. And it seems like my whole life has been hold my beer to Miss Lord on that, I've wanted to be in the system to fix it. And, I think that's kind of a dichotomy that we have, that it's it was designed to be disadvantaged, but it's each and every generation finds a way to challenge that and change the game. So anyway, why is storytelling important?
Yes. Ah, yes. Why is storytelling important? Without storytelling, do we know who we are? Do we know what has happened? What is the story of now? What is the story of us? And storytelling is how we teach each other, how we understand each other, how we move away from this is just an academic exercise to this is a lived reality. Whether it was for me, whether it was for my ancestors, this happened. Storytelling, I think, is vital to us as human beings and as a collective.
Yeah. And I think it's a lost art with politicians. And that's a whole different conversation. I literally had one of the best storytellers, I think. I say one of the best, but she's like a teacher of that. And then we had a real good discussion on the podcast about storytelling. Why are veterans considered great political candidates?
So the caveat here, and I've said this, for a long time, is that just because one is a veteran does not make one a leader. And we have seen that, right? There are all kinds of different veterans. But that aside, veterans are incredibly unique, especially when you think about, I'm partial to enlisted former military who are predominantly more Black and brown folks are enlisted. They come from all over the United States, every pocket. And there's something really special about basically, as I said in that quote that you started off with, as being a grunt, as being somebody that is on the front lines or, behind the scenes doing the work that is unseen and unheard and so vital. I also think that my era of military veterans has lived through so much of this country's downfall, whether it's these unpopular and unwinning wars. Nobody wants to really say that aloud, but, I grew up in Boston, like I said, and so I was raised in the whole tradition of, America as a beacon of hope and the revolution. And, it's still a core part of myself. But when I entered the military, you start seeing the reality of that breakdown. You start seeing that although we may be the most armed to the teeth and the wealthiest country in the world, that does not necessarily translate it to justice and democracy. And when veterans come home, and this has been true, since Medgar Evers, right? Went abroad, World War II, came home, and then saw the disparity, the injustice on a basic level as much as voting, and was killed for it by another veteran who was a white supremacist. Veterans have such a unique lens and an astronomical power to define the future of this country and what we stand for. And so I am excited when I see veterans that are anchored in human rights, in justice, running for all levels of office, but particularly local office. I was in Florida. I lived in Florida during a few years ago, we had 3 hurricanes in 5 weeks back to back that were pretty damaging and traumatic. And it was no surprise to me that in moments like that, it's emergency responders, veterans, social workers, as you named, people who are trained to take care of others in a true sense, almost run towards that mission. And I do believe we need more legislators at the local level that are organizers and doers, right? Not just pundits, not just there for ideological whatever. We need people that actually have the skills to lead people out of crisis. And that's never been more urgent.
So I'm going to jump to this question. How can veterans play a major role in building a sustainable economy?
A sustainable economy, you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, veterans are very unique in that we get government benefits that a lot of the population does not. And so there's a real opportunity, I think, for veterans who have that privilege. You can say it's a privilege or, it's a debt that was paid to us, but I do believe that we are in a unique position to support small businesses. Veterans are among the fastest growing, entrepreneurial force in the country. Veterans are also unsurprisingly pulled very much into the cryptocurrency world, good or bad. And at the end of the day, I think veterans could serve, again, I always come back to how we can serve our communities. And whether it's me as a veteran, me as a daughter of an immigrant, or me as a leader, in Black and Brown communities, there's just a leadership that's thrust upon us to help others navigate out of the crisis that we're in. And we are in an economic crisis. We call it the affordability crisis, but our country is being taken over by mega billionaires at this point, monopolies. And I think because of the strength of the veteran voice, people, veterans are among the most trusted messengers in American politics. We have a duty to not just tell people, because people know, people in regular communities all over this country, they know what's up. And I just think that we can play a really interesting role in localizing our economies, in creating regenerative economies. Yeah, I'll leave it there. But
Okay. Well, now we're getting into the issue part of the program. So since you brought up benefits, do you believe that veteran benefits, especially disability benefits, should be tax exempt?
I don't know, actually. Nobody's ever asked me that question. I mean, I think taxes in general have become, a little bit of a scam. And I'll give you an example. Every time in my bank account, it'll say I'll get my benefits dropped in, but immediately after I get my student debt taken out. And so my generation, of veterans, I think is in an interesting situation where we're just not receiving what they say we're receiving. I think most folks don't realize that getting veteran disability benefits is actually a multi-year endeavor, if people even get it at all. It is actually extremely difficult. The system is absolutely set up against the individual to prove in a pretty traumatic process if you are disabled or not. It has become even more fraught with the current Congress that, has threatened to change the system, which I do think there is important ways that we can streamline these programs so that there is not waste, but that's not what they're doing. They're trying to get out of taking care of veterans while at the same time throwing us into more unpopular and unstrategic wars. So, I mean, I don't know much about it, so I hesitate to say on the policy level, but yes, it's hard enough, but I think it would depend on the veterans. Yeah.
So you were talking about the process. One of the things that I came across was this term called a claim shark.
Yeah.
And so I think the claim sharks are kind of part of the reason why the process is skewed and prolonged. But are they a necessary evil, or can that practice be stopped?
I mean, the claim sharks, it's very, so there's actually so many parallels between veterans disability benefits and claim sharks and people going through immigration, citizenship, and lawyer sharks that take advantage of those people, because at the end of the day, the United States government has made both of these processes nearly impossible and punitive, right? And so there's going to be that opportunism of somebody that comes in and say, hey, if you pay me $5,000, I can guarantee that you're going to get this very valuable thing that you need to live, right? This isn't like a benefit that is nothing. So it is unfortunate. I mean, I always go back to, are we as a people going to transform our government, especially at a time when it is dangerous? I mean, again, like, people yawn at, oh, this is just a bureaucratic quagmire that can't be fixed. But it's, in my view, not hubris to say it is killing people to allow this to continue and to just say, well, this is just how it has to be. we cannot claim that the United States is the best country in the world if it, again, continues to act in violence and corruption.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. I do have another story. So one of the things that always bothered me, and it's something that until that is fixed, is always going to be an image in my head. So having the privilege of having to go to DC, and you probably are familiar with this being an activist, it's like you've got this beautiful white building, the Department of Veterans Affairs, which I'm ashamed now a Georgian is over that department because he's not a great representative of Georgia. However, there's a park right next to the building, and it's homeless veterans all over the park. You can barely see the grass or the benches because of all of the bodies that are there. And to me, I just said, if some president ever made the mistake and put me in that building and said, you're responsible for the veterans of the United States, I'd be like, I know we got to deal with the hospitals, whatever, but we got to get these people out of this park. I'm not looking at all these homeless veterans, and there's no way we can fix that. We can't even think about if I've got somebody that has served my country, who has laid down, especially in a time of war, has literally put their bodies on the line. They made it back safely, and they don't have a house to live in. I just think that's, I get it, the healthcare, but it's like, are we giving them the best healthcare, right? Or are we giving them more of a bureaucratic process because we're trying to hook our friends up with contracts? Anyway, but it's like, let's deal with that. That to me is the most oxymoronic image of America as we know it. And then they turn around and say, oh, we're the greatest country in the world. As the president say, oh, we're the hottest country. We're hot because it's July. We're not hot because we're doing something that is the light of the world, that is setting an example for other countries to follow. So anyway, you're making me get on my soapbox. I think I know why you started doing that. But anyway, I'm going to try to close it out and get a couple more issues in. Do you think ICE should be abolished?
Absolutely. Without question.
Why?
They were never meant to be a permanent force, first of all. I mean, I can go on and on about how the agency has become rogue. It's visible every day. Just this week here, I'm currently in Oregon. ICE raids have been happening for definitely over the decade that I've been organizing, but it has become so unhinged, out of control, dangerous. And it is not, whether it's the Department of Defense, now War, ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, or Border Patrol. These agencies, when you actually think about what is their mission, what is their purpose, not only are they not meeting that basic threshold, but they're actually creating just real catastrophic violence and trauma that will take decades to repair. And so absolutely, ICE should be abolished and transformed into something that actually does do the job, which Immigration Customs Enforcement, I would think, is, instead of brutalizing people who are trying, we now have so much proof that they're not just detaining and brutalizing people who don't have papers, but they're brutalizing people that are in the process, showing up to court, also citizens, also veterans. Like, it has gone off the hinges, right? And so it's been pretty obvious to me for over a decade that the United States just has never made the process to citizenship actually equitable or feasible, and now is trying to clean up its mess by basically bringing an ethnic cleansing force into our streets. And not only should it be abolished, but I think that that there should be investigations and tribunals into what's happening right now. Because there's something, I won't go into it too much. My background is in anti-terrorism, intelligence in the military, and I'm very concerned about where these recruits are coming from, and if they do also have ties to white supremacist nationalist groups. Because here, just this week, there's a reporting that it struck me, because this is something we warned about, but there are now imitating militia and supremacist groups that are just wearing the tactical gear that you can wear online, say putting a police badge on and assaulting people and brutalizing them. So yeah, abolishing it is, I think, a first step. Investigating and then transforming the agency is what it's so obvious to me that it's something that the next administration or future administrations need to do. And Congress, it's Congress's job to oversee these agencies. So where are they?
Yeah. And my next question is going to be about Congress, but here in Atlanta, where I'm living, it's like we have a law enforcement arm within our transportation system, MARTA. And so, instead of like, if you're homeless and you're out in the street of Atlanta, the Atlanta PD will probably come if you're sleeping like in the doorway of an apartment or condo building. They're going to grab you and take you to the jail. What MARTA does is like, hey, do you need someplace to stay? Whatever. Here's a book, go to this place. At least you can get you some sleep. We can't have you sleeping on the train, right? They're not arresting him. They're just kind of like subtly saying, here's a place where you can go if you need to rest or you need something to eat or something like that. But we got to get you off of the train. To me, that's where immigration and custom enforcement needs to go. Instead of being a Gestapo, which I don't think you wanted to say it, but I'll say it because I blasted them jokers the last episode. I think we need to get them to a place where it's like, you knock on the door and say, hey, I understand that you're having some issues with your paperwork, or I'm assuming you got some issues. Is there anything we can help you to do this? Can we take you to a lawyer? Can we take you somewhere like that? I know people may say that's like Andy Griffith kind of, but we got to get to a point where humanity is a part of our government, right? We got to get to that point. And I don't know. I'm still fleshing it out in my mind, but I just wanted to say it out loud. All right, let's try to close this out. Since you brought up Congress, how can congressional authority over war powers be restored when the current membership doesn't seem to have the political will to do so?
That's a tough one. I mean, until we get, money in politics plays a big role. The defense lobby is constantly, I think, one of the biggest barriers to that political will, right? When so many of the people in Congress that you would most think would take a stand, some of them being veterans, but then you realize that their campaigns are being rolled by the defense lobby and that those are the folks that they're most talking to under the guise of national security or defense. That's a real problem. Especially, I think, in the last few years and now, Washington, D.C. is kind of overtaken by defense innovation, right? Drones, AI, that is the sexy thing that everybody wants to be in front of, even though there's a clear conflict with humanity, as you said, right? So I think until we can really resolve that, we're not going to see our Congress people actually stepping up and doing the right thing. I also do think that we need more enlisted. Again, there's articles that come out around, we have more veterans in office than ever before. But if you actually look at it, they're still mostly white. They're still mostly officers, still mostly coming from those legacy political families that have ties. And get a Marine infantry, Black woman to be a congressperson in a place like Texas, like Florida. And you're going to see a different politic, I believe. I really believe that the wave of survivors from military sexual violence from a few years ago, right, when Vanessa Guillen was murdered on Fort Hood and we demanded accountability, one of our demands is that we would boycott enlistment if Congress did not do their job. And it was effective. We compelled the first ever independent report from the Department of Defense. And I really believe if we had those survivors in Congress, impunity within the Department of Defense would be tackled much more aggressively. And the last thing I'll say is the war makers, the people in and around DC that fashion themselves smart on how to do war, the think tanks, I mean, those are also funded heavily by the defense sector. And again, nobody wants to say it, but they're not winning. They're not at, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's Palestine, whether it's Iran now, whether it's, South America, all of these incursions have been nothing but looting by the defense industry. And I think that this generation is more awake than most that, whether it was the Afghanistan withdrawal where the 13, military members were killed, or just now there's these 4 young people that were killed in Jordan because of Iran. And now the administration is trying to erase their deaths as part of the count, that this government actually does not really care either about the civilians that are being caught in the crossfire or the military members who have to fight these wars. And so I'm hoping that more voices like that find their way into Congress, either as members or as staffers or as interns, right? Because we know that, again, it's staffers that actually move Congress. And we don't talk enough that sometimes those staffers also come from, they're not coming from working class, working military grunt backgrounds either.
Yeah, that's true. All right. So my last question comes from a group that a group that you actually started, Common Defense. Currently on their website, it says the political system needs a clear line. Any Democrat who votes to fund Trump's illegal and unjust war should not expect the support of the veteran community, the progressive movement, or the donor networks that power Democratic campaigns. So my question to you is this. If a Democratic member or candidate that supports the current war with Iran makes it to the general election, what would you encourage voters to do?
You're talking about the presidential 2028 election?
Presidential 2028. Some of these jokers then made it to the midterm election in Congress in 26.
I think generally that position is the right one. War with Iran has been a saber rattling for a long time in DC without any meaningful progress to why are we doing this other than just trying to create more of a boogie person and a quagmire in that region. So yeah, if in fact somebody gets across the line that supports these wars, I would not be surprised because the entire system is kind of set up for somebody like that to make it rather than somebody not like that to make it, right? So, I think that our focus should much more be right now on making sure that we have a bench of candidates that do not. And that I think is the real gap. It's great that they're making that line, but I would want to know, what are you doing to ensure that we have multiple nominees that are strong and that can make it across the line? Because, in the last election, I still feel floored that there's not more discourse around it, that the Democratic Party decided to basically just omit primary debate. There was no conversation. It was, Joe Biden was shoehorned in there despite his unpopularity, regardless of them attaching Kamala Harris to him. And anybody that is in the business of progressive political organizations, all of their efforts should be seriously into making sure that that does not happen again. So I'm less interested about, what if that happens, it's another Tuesday. We need to be aggressively working to making sure that we have 2, 3 nominees that are firmly anti-war, because we also know that the Republicans are claiming the anti-war mantle, despite them lying about it. But not just anti-war, but also, again, pro-peace solutions. There's an entire world and universe waiting for us where we are living in prosperity together. Because at the end of the day, if you're, again, a grunt working class person in Iran, in the Middle East, in South America, in Senegal, we have more in common with this corrupt billionaire takeover that is being exercised through these wars. And so I really firmly believe that there is a prosperous future that the progressive movement can usher in if we get serious about building our bench rather than constantly playing defense with, again, like you say, these jokers that keep rigging the rules in their favor.
All right. So that leads into my final challenge. Finish this sentence. I have hope because.
I have hope because I come from incredible, strong ancestors. Many of us do, who survived the impossible and have therefore taught me that what feels impossible is actually possible. And I have hope because I know that in every pocket of this world that is staunchly against us, there are people that are doing little things to help each other, not just survive, but to thrive.
Yeah. So Pamela Campos Palma, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. The conversation. You kind of got my mind going, and when my mind going, my mouth tends to follow. So I apologize for stretching out the interview longer because I was talking, but I really enjoyed our dialogue. If people want to dialogue with you further, how can they do that?
Sure. People can find me on Twitter still or Blue Sky, PamCP, PamCPSIO. I love hearing from different folks. So just at me and I'll respond.
Okay. And do you have like a website or anything like that too, or?
Yeah, just pamcp.com.
Okay. All right. Well, again, I greatly appreciate you, Pamela, coming on and having this discussion. One of the rules that I have is that once you have been on the show, you have an open invitation to come back. So if there's something pressing, you decide you want to write a book, you want to run for office, whatever, as the old folks say, puts the bee in the bonnet, feel free to come back and we'll get you back on. But again, I really appreciated the conversation we had today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, guys. And we're going to catch y'all on the other side. All right. And we are back. So I want to thank Dr. Erica Wattley, my enthusiastic, encouraging friend, for coming on the show. I want to thank Victoria Hetherington. So glad that we were able to get this interview going because I've been wanting to talk about her book, The Friend Machine, for a long time. And very, very engaging conversation. I enjoyed it very much. Look forward to her further work on this subject. And for Pamela Campos Palma, who is really, really a true warrior, not in the sense of being a former veteran. Like, yeah, you can't say former veteran. That's kind of redundant. Veteran of our armed services, but she is also proving to be a fighter and a veteran for civil rights and political power in this country. Amazing, amazing conversations. And I'm really, really honored to have a platform where I could talk to people like that. And I hope that you enjoyed those conversations. A couple of thoughts before I go. One, so you remember they had this White House Correspondents' Dinner earlier this year, and it got basically disrupted and canceled because a man got past security and basically stated his goal was to assassinate President Trump. And there was some talk about whether they would wait till next year to do it or do it again. President Trump, for whatever reason, because he had never been to one since Obama called him out when he was just Citizen Trump. And, during his first term, he never went to one, but he seemed hell-bent on attending this year. And so he even said, we need to have it at the White House and blah, blah. And that kind of defeats the purpose of the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Nonetheless, he insisted, and the leadership of the organization capitulated, and they had another one. And that's my commentary. You capitulated. the White House Correspondents Association is supposed to be a reminder that the press is the unofficial fourth estate of government, that they're independent, that they shouldn't care if the president likes them or not, or if any other government official likes them or not. They're there to report what happens. And some even have the latitude and the ability to commentate on what happens. And, to give the impression that you're trying to please the president goes against everything that the organization is supposed to stand for. Now, I'm not a member, never have been, but I have been a reporter at one time in my life. I have been a member of the press. And so my concept of independence is offended by them even having the dinner. It doesn't matter what he said. I mean, he tried to tell some jokes, all that stuff. It's fine. I mean, not every president is great at that. Donald Trump is evil for his own reasons, primarily greed and avarice and vengeance. But, it's a shame that they even honored the request, to appease him to have this dinner. It just, and at some point in time, people in leadership need to pay attention to what the citizens are saying. And, the majority of the citizens, the ones that are not in the cult or super fandom or whatever term you want to use, average ordinary American citizens are tired of the show. And it would not hurt you to look the president in the eye and say no, because for the other 40, he was 45 and 47. The other 45 other presidents, 44 other presidents that served, the press has been able to say no. I don't know why this one is so magical. I don't know why we have people that exist that don't understand what the concept of leadership is, which is one of the main reasons why I had Dr. Wattley come on, and other people that do that kind of coaching and, have had some experience, like Betsy Hodges and Chastity Wells and those people who have actually served in office and had to make tough decisions and had to tell people no, or had to have people tell them no when they wanted to do something, right? Within the bounds of the process. So, I don't know what it will take other than changes in leadership, but you just changing pieces. I'm a fat dude, right? So me changing one t-shirt to another t-shirt is not going to make me less fat, right? One might make me look better than the other shirt, but I'm still fat, right? And so if you change leadership, that's not going to change the direction. You're just changing people and you're keeping the same cowardice or keeping the same lack of fortitude. Then there's not an improvement, right? But, I just wish that we didn't have people in positions that don't know how to lead. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about is Nancy Mace. Now, I have invited the Congresswoman to come on the show. There was some indications that she would come on, express some interest, but then that never happened. And since then, she has finished 5th in a statewide race for governor of South Carolina. And she basically got told, no, don't even bother to run for Lindsey Graham's seat in the special election or in the general election. Nobody was interested in that. So I guess she decided that her swan song in American politics would be to try to abolish the Congressional Black Caucus. Now, I don't know, I can't remember how old Nancy Mace is. I didn't research that before I wanted to make this commentary, but I do know that the Congressional Black Caucus is older than she is. And I do know that the historical significance of the Black Caucus is more important than any historical significance she would have. The most historical thing she has done is that she was the first woman to graduate from the Citadel, which at that time was an all-male military academy in South Carolina, and she parlayed that to get elected to Congress and all that stuff. And at one point, she looked like she was on the McCain path. And then, of course, again, lack of fortitude and leadership ability, she fell into the Donald Trump camp. And some of y'all may have never heard of her until she went after the first transgender congressperson, Sarah McBride, in trying to deny her bathroom access, right? So, I know she's been through a lot, and I know that she has a story to tell like any human being does, but you are part of a state that is almost a third African American. Your colleague in Congress is one of the longest serving members in congressional history. It's definitely, I believe, in terms of all South Carolinians, I think he's has served the second longest time behind Strom Thurmond in Congress, period. And you want to insult him and the Black South Carolinians and the Black people all over the United States by saying that there shouldn't be an organization where the Black members can gather and create an agenda to fight for Black people all over this country. If her resolution saw the light of day and actually got passed, then that would also mean the Hispanic caucus would have to dissolve, the Asian American Pacific Islander Conference would have to dissolve. And, there's some organizations within the Republican Party. I think there's a Black Republican caucus, and they would have to dissolve, right? And, the whole argument is, the typical dumb tropes of reverse racism or DEI is bad and, that kind of thing. And it's like, that's a tone-deaf position as well. When the former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, looked at his Republican Party and said it looks like a country club compared to the Democrats, which look like America. He said that. And so your swan song in Congress, your last moment of glory is to double down on the country club aspect. I mean, the insanity is what it is. I do not think that it is going to happen. I do think that the Congressional Black Caucus will still be in existence once Nancy Mace's term is up in January. However, just the audacity, just the gumption. I really wish that these people would get over their mental illness of racism and use that fire and energy to make this country better, right? If I think it was some superhero that used to chastise the villains he fought and say, if you only used your power for good, right? If you would just focus in on dealing with poverty. South Carolina has poverty issues, right? Just like a lot of states. But, you're in the South, so poverty is a real issue in the southern states. Why not use your talent to eradicate that, right? Why not use your talent to make sure that every American citizen, especially in South Carolina, has health care access, right? or just healthcare, period, right? Because even access will say, okay, well, you can get to the doctor, but can you pay for it, right? So let's just say healthcare. Make sure that job development is happening, infrastructure development. We're in the 21st century and we still don't have high-speed rail like other nations. We still depend on fossil fuels, right? Instead of building an electric car infrastructure. Hell, you could have a liquid natural gas infrastructure. I don't care, but we got to get away from, and I guess natural gas would be considered a fossil fuel. But it's a lot cleaner and cheaper than oil refining. I don't know. I just don't understand why people who don't really give a damn about people want to serve in a position that's of, for, and by the people. I never understood the logic in that, other than the fact that you want to destroy that. I don't get people who think that punishing American citizens or people who want to be American citizens, why they want to serve in government. You can be an anti-government faction and protest and all that stuff. And, but you want to get in government to destroy it. I just don't get it. I really wish that people would not look at other human beings and say that because of their affinity for certain people or their love for certain people or their looks or their ethnic heritage is the reason why gas is $4 or $5 a gallon. Why you don't have the best education system available to you, why you don't have the best healthcare system available to you, right? We brag about all these Nobel Prize laureates that American universities have produced, and we're not building on that. We're slow walking the technology and the ideas that a lot of these people have, people that even just nominated for a Nobel Prize in the sciences. We were years ahead of the world for a number, almost 2 centuries. And, and we've allowed everybody else to catch up and even pass us because we're looking at somebody moving into our neighborhood and losing our mind, or our schools being more diverse. We don't want people to have access to public transportation because of some myth that crime is going to increase. I'm sorry, I don't know too many burglars that use public transportation to get away from a crime. I don't know. I don't understand how these myths get so powerful that they create people that run on those myths as platforms and they get elected. But fear is probably the most powerful drug in the United States. More dangerous than fentanyl, more dangerous than cocaine, more dangerous than any other natural or synthetic drug that exists. Fear is our problem, because fear leads to racism. Fear leads to, any other ism you want to, sexism, whatever. Any other ism that's out there, fear is the cause of it. Islamophobia, xenophobia, right? Phobia is the Greek word for fear. And so if we adhere to Franklin Delano Roosevelt's plea that there's nothing to fear but fear itself, that wasn't just a catchphrase to go into war. That's the way we should live our life. Shouldn't be afraid of anybody or anything. We were just talking about a situation where we were worried about somebody losing their temper and would I be able to handle that situation? And I told him, yeah, you know, you can put your money on the other guy if you want to, but I'm going to handle it. Right? I mean, that's the mindset you have to have. Can't go in playing sports thinking you're going to get hurt. You can't go into a situation where you think you're going to die. You block those fears and do your job. Well, I don't want to do this because, I don't want to pursue this idea because I may get fired. If you think the idea is going to make your company or make the nation better, then do it. But don't use fear as a philosophy of leadership, right? Don't play on people's fears to attain your personal power or to attain personal wealth, right? Just be better than that. There is nothing that the Congressional Black Caucus would do to South Carolina that wouldn't be beneficial to them. There's no agenda that they're pushing. It's detrimental. But you, Nancy Mace, trying to abolish the Black Caucus, which, by virtue of their position represents a third of your state, even though there's only one Black representative. Well, no, there's two, because you got Clyburn in the House, and then you got Tim Scott in the Senate. So, you're basically offending them. Now, Scott's not a member of the Black Caucus, but that's by choice. Nonetheless, he's a Black man, albeit he doesn't think racism exists in America, but nonetheless, he's a Black man. And you telling him that there can't even be a Black Republican caucus is an insult. That's more detrimental. Promoting fear is more detrimental than anything that any caucus that's looking out for their own people would do, right? And it's like, to me, why is it bad for Black folks to galvanize, but white folks have been galvanizing since the 1660s? It's all about the power of fear, or power fueled by fear. If we're going to survive another 250 years, that has to end. The concept of America should last forever and should be expanded worldwide. Not by force, but by example. But it is human beings who don't fully grasp it or think they can manipulate it are the ones that hinder the progress of that concept. So I'm hoping that when this election is over in November and we have a new Congress in January, that people like Nan, we know she's going to be gone, but that other people will be out of the mix as well, people like her. And we will be electing people. We won't get rid of all of them because Randy Fine still exists. But, we won't have an Andy Biggs. We won't have a Mike Collins. We won't have, there'll be a number of them that'll be gone. And I hope that that'll be a trend instead of a one election aberration. So I'm praying that, we get to that point and we can start moving forward and stop entertaining this mess, and that those people who have fringe ideas are put back into fringe. It's all right to take a radical concept and try to see if we can work it in. That's positive. But this fear-based stuff just got to go. Anyway, that's all I got. I just had to say it. I haven't heard anybody else say anything about it. But if we're going to make it, if we're going to get better, then we got to stop being afraid of each other. We've got to embrace people and allow people to live their lives, right? As long as it's not causing harm, so long as it's not doing any damage, let people live their lives. But if your lifestyle is racism, I guess I have to draw the line there. If your lifestyle is hate, you have to draw the line there. Because even if you tolerate people, that's an act of love. And you may disagree with me, but I don't give you the latitude to hate me, especially if you're asking me to vote for you. That's that happening. So anyway, like I said, that's all I got. Thank y'all for listening. Until next time.
NBG Podcast Network.